Yes. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
It's so lovely to see all of you. This morning we are going to inaugurate our new series, How to Lead a Guided Life. Even though we've already got several videos, but we're inaugurating it now. Because it's just coming together the way things happen. And how we thought that we would start is by talking about the magic of the guided life. Because before we get into the rough stuff, we want to talk a little bit about why we would want to and what the magic is. For many people, the idea of leading a guided life is magical because they believe that they are going to manifest what they want through doing that. And that may be true for them. But what we're talking about, when I'm talking about the magic of the guided life, is a different kind of magic. It's an inner magic. It's the change in the way we feel. First, let me say that what I mean by a guided life is guided by Source, God, higher consciousness, higher power, greater intelligence, the Great Spirit, Buddha consciousness, whatever it is that you associate with a higher level of consciousness than we typically walk around with. And this series is here to help us to begin to live that in a daily way. And there's going to be many videos. The next one, which really is about the beginning of the process, is talking about how we're always guided by something. Fear, ego, stomach ache, our sex drive, whatever. And the question is, what are we going to be guided by? And so that really brings us into the confrontation with ourselves, that we can't pretend that we're not guided by something, but we want to be making conscious choices about what that is. And then we're also going to have videos about how we connect to that higher consciousness. We're going to have many videos about that, some on a purely energetic level. We're going to talk about processes and so on. I began to become aware that I was leading a guided life in 1978 when I had a spiritual awakening. Prior to that, I was an atheist and a political activist and very driven to change the world. And I felt that I knew how. And I was just trying to talk everybody else into listening to me.
I am that.
And so I was driven, I wouldn't say guided, I was driven by my anguish about the state of the world as I saw it from a very young child. And I think many of you have had that experience too. Mm-hmm. And while I think that many of the causes that I participated in were very worthwhile, and I believe that I lived a worthwhile life in the process, it was very tense, because it was always me against everybody else who hadn't figured it out yet. And it was me against reality, because it wasn't shaping up, and so on. And I felt like a complete failure because I hadn't fixed the world by my mid-30s. And I had no life other than this obsession, this drive that I had. And there was an intervention which I can now see was from the level of God or higher consciousness or the Source. And the intervention was that the organization I was working for, that I was actually a leader in, when I say working for, we never made any money doing any of these things, right? There was this big blow up in the organization, and I was just in shock because of things that happened. And after 4 years of dedication to this cause, I just felt like my life had fallen apart, because from the time I was 9 years old until my mid-30s, I was a dedicated social activist, and I just couldn't do it anymore. It was too corrupted by ego, my own included, and too angry, and too gamey, and too much inside politics, and I had no place to go. So I had a complete identity crisis and meltdown, as many of you have had in other situations in your life, where maybe you were in a marriage that just ended abruptly, or whatever, where you're just thrown completely into the not knowing. And I didn't have any spiritual preparation for becoming not knowing. But the universe conspired to bring me to the next step of my life, which was my spiritual awakening. And it would never have happened had I not had that horrible crisis that stopped my life as I knew it. For some people it's cancer. You know, it happens to many of us. And I met an alcoholic and went to a program for a 12-step program. And they were talking about a higher power and God, and I wanted to run because I was so anti-religion, and I was also anti-God. I had made a decision when I was quite young that if there were a God, I would have to hate him, because the world was so painful. And so I made the choice that I wasn't going to believe that there was a God in order for me to live with the reality of the way the world was. And that was the decision that I made very young. And here I am in this room with these people with this kind of insipidly serene smile, and here I am with my stomach churning, and I had to make a choice then about whether they were really as stupid as they looked, or I was as stupid as I really was. That maybe they actually knew something that I didn't, rather than just judging them as being airheads. You know, and I decided to believe that they knew something that I didn't, because I could see that they were in a better space than I was. And so I began to entertain the possibility that there was a God, a higher power. And it was, I would say, the moment of the greatest relaxation I had ever felt in my life up to that point, because I suddenly realized that I was not alone and I did not have to fix it, and that all my life I'd been trying to fix it. Then I just try to fix myself, but that's another story, which I've also realized is a foolish endeavor. I can do everything that I can to work towards, you know, to be guided into releasing and so on, but it's not up to me to fix myself either. So that was the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and almost immediately I started having conversations with God. And I was writing them. I was guided to do this by a woman who was my sponsor in this program, and she had gotten this technique from a sponsor of hers, that you sit down at the typewriter, and I would just, it was like automatic writing, which I'd never heard of, and I'd write God, and I'd write Beth, and all these things were coming out, and I was, you know, having these conversations. And I was looking at this thing and saying, gee, that's interesting. And I never gave it a thought, like there was anything extraordinary about it. It just seemed like the obvious thing to do. And in the 12-step programs, there is a step which says, sought through prayer and meditation to increase our conscious contact with God as we understand God. And it was praying only for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry it out. So, and it was His those days. So I said, okay, this is pretty cool. Everybody does this. And it was only 2 years later, when I had a full-blown psychic awakening, that I realized that I had a gift. And that I was able to tune in to this higher consciousness. And that gift was given to me for one purpose, which is to serve. And even this was guided, because you can see how stumbling along my life was being guided. And that's the real magic, you see, is to be able to look at all these catastrophes and begin to see that it is all guided. And there's a sense of relaxation about all of that, and a sense of wonder about it. And even when I've come out of extremely foolish choices, which I have continued to make, even since my spiritual awakening and my connection with Source, nevertheless I make, foolish mistakes, but they're all guided. I'm supposed to make those stupid mistakes because how else am I going to realize how stupid I am? And not only has that given me a great sense of relaxation about myself that I can come out of judgment, but when I'm actually practicing this, which I do sometimes, I can actually get out of judgment about everybody else because I can look at them and say, well, this is guided too. Oh, you're drinking again, and you're going to end up in a homeless shelter. That's interesting, as they say in the 12-step programs. You're doing more research. I mean, who am I to judge? I can be an allowance of our whole planet. I mean, if you watch the news and you have any awareness of what's going on, you will just go, is everybody crazy? And the answer is yes. And that's okay too, because it's all guided. I mean, I've gotten to this place of being able to accept things which are unacceptable, that are absolutely unacceptable to my human mind, because I'm saying this is evolution, and what's really happening on this planet is the evolution of consciousness, and whether the human race survives or not is really not that relevant, because we are like a grain of sand on the beach. How many moths die because they flew into my house by mistake? When I said, please don't come in, there was one this morning that was dead on the carpet.
By the way, he wasn't quite dead.
Oh, he wasn't?
I took him outside and his little legs wiggled around.
Oh, good. So maybe there's a chance. Maybe
okay.
He was good. We were just hoping
But
that.
you're noticing guided us to have him carried out.
Exactly. So we
Life
didn't.
out there in the fresh air.
So we didn't step on him. But it's all about a higher purpose, a higher purpose, a higher purpose. I used to laugh, and I still do, at people who say, well, life is a mystery and you can't explain it. Well, I understand what they mean by that. But I think I have the ready explanation. Everything is about evolution. So now I'm satisfied. I have satisfied my mind. I have an excuse for everything. It's all part of evolution. And I can be at peace. And guess what? When I'm at peace, I'm more guided. And when I'm more guided, I'm more helpful. All that time that I was fighting reality because I knew better, I wasn't helpful. I was shrill. I was shaming. I wasn't helping. I don't care if I'm making it up. If it works, don't fix it. It works for me to believe in the evolution of consciousness. It works for me to be able to have more compassion for people when they're doing things that are clearly self-destructive and when they're doing things that are hurtful to others. To be more in allowance of what is and simultaneously be completely activated. Because I am not talking about passivity. I am talking about being relaxed, accepting, and guided. And in that moment, when we feel guided to speak or act, we have the confidence to do it because we're connected to a higher consciousness. And that has led me to do just the opposite of what you would think this would lead me to, which is to stand up in the face of somebody who's a complete maniac and confront them and be without fear. Or I shouldn't say without fear, with fear, but doing it anyway because I feel guided. And that belief in guidance allows me to be silent when I need to be silent, to be courageous when I need to be courageous, to act when I need to act, and to shut the heck up when I need to sit and wait, and sometimes even grieve. That is the magic of the guided life. I have dozens, hundreds, thousands maybe of stories of how my life has been, because I am guided cognitively. I mean, I hear words in my head that tell me what to do. I have gut feelings. I have visions. I have direct, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. I know that not everybody has that, but I sure as heck want to help you to get as close to that as possible for how guidance comes to you. But none of that makes any difference of all the phenomenal stories that I could tell you about the miraculous things that have happened to me, that I've bought houses that I couldn't buy, that I went to empty buildings and found books that shouldn't be there. You know, just one story after another that people who that I've worked with and I've known for years just sit there and watch my life and say, how did you do that? I don't know. Workshop series come out of my mouth with no preparation. I just sit there and say, okay, God, what do you want to say? Books have written themselves. But that is nothing. That's just one way that guidance can show up. What's really important is how I feel on the inside, is how connected I feel to the divine, to the relaxation that I finally achieved. I have achieved my 68th birthday. And I feel forever young. And I've been physically ill almost all of my life. You know, we laugh. You know, I am the corpse that rises to come to here, and you'd never know how dead I am. You don't know that I died 20 years ago, because I'm powered by the source. But so are you. Because if you look at it, you will see how you too have been guided. And it may not look like me. See, and I don't want to tell you dazzling stories, because then you're just going to sit there and say, well, that's never happened to me. But look in your heart and see what has happened to you, the way you have been guided step by step. Sometimes because you just know something. Sometimes because you've been bludgeoned into it, like I was. When my life fell apart and I had a spiritual awakening. And if I can only but remember that, I can relax into the process of living and be a support to everyone, because I am then being guided by higher consciousness, not by my ego, not by my fear, not by my opinions, which are usually wrong. Yes, you can even be guided by the IRS. James and I had our spiritual marriage in October of 2011. I can never keep track of dates. And we thought for sure that we would be able to do the legal mop-up within weeks. But we had a whole bunch of stuff, wreckage from the past, that needed to be cleared up. Well, it's taken 1.5 years. And we finally got the last piece from the external world. And I could sit and fume and say, well, they've taken a year to do this. But it was all guided. You know why? Because we're more ready to get married today than we were 1.5 years ago. That was part 1. Part 2 is going to be by Buddha's retreat tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. And Helen is going to finish it. And it's because it isn't because of the IRS, and it's not because of this, and it's not because of that, and it's not because of that. It's because of evolution, because we were evolving, and we needed to get married 1.5 years ago in order to be here. And we needed all of this time and all of these experiences to reach a place of unity. So this really means something different from what it would have meant had it all fallen into place 1.5 years ago. That is the magic. The magic of the guided life is the magic of a shift in our own consciousness so that we can begin to appreciate our own lives and the magic of our lives and the magic of who we are. And our ability to be guided by everything that happens, by allowing everything that happens to be information for us. Well, maybe we didn't get this piece of paper because we weren't ready. Or maybe we didn't get this piece of paper because we're supposed to go and raise hell. And I don't know which it is. I have to ask for divine guidance. And whatever happens, ultimately, chalk it up to guidance and evolution. It's the joy and the ability to increase our capacity to be ever more serene, ever more blissful, ever more connected to the powerful energies that really guide us, that so many of us don't even recognize. Yet many of us do. And in this series, we will be guided to support one another, to expand our capacity, to understand, to be guided in our behaviors, and to connect to the divine energies that make everything more bearable and can often bring us even to bliss.